There we go. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. All righty. So what is going on, everybody? This is a brand new live stream episode of TheLead Houston, where it's all Houston sports, all Houston all the time. The hot spot for all your news, rumors, and updates. I try to do as best as I can, and I got a very esteemed guest with me. Y'all see him. His name is Cole Thompson. He's been amongst many other podcasts before. He talks some college football every once in a while on YouTube. He has a good buddy that I know, and Joe De Leon. I know he just loves him so much. And
God, did you see his? Did you text him when he was
Yes.
doing the challenge? I called him and I could not stop. I could not stop. Why are you not live streaming this? Like, why
Yes.
would he, like, I told him you could have
Because-
made, he gained 5,000 followers on Twitter
yes,
in a day.
he got 1 million views.
He would have gotten thousands to his podcast if you would have
Yes.
live streamed it. I was like,
Yes.
why did you not live stream it? I would have watched
Exactly.
all 12 hours of it.
That's easy views, easy content
It's
right
so
there,
easy,
man.
bro. It's so easy. But I love Joe. I do. He is.
I do.
He is a one. He is a one.
I didn't expect that tweet to pop off and get almost 5 million views.
It got aggregated by literally everywhere. I have
Dude,
never been more proud of him in my life, and he did it by just sucking at fantasy football.
Yeah, man, that was hilarious. I enjoyed that tweet a lot. So yeah, everybody, we got some people rolling in here right now. Louis, what's up, man? I know you're waiting on the stream. Appreciate it. Albert, what's up, man? What's going on? We're getting some people trickling in here now. Cole Thompson, you are Texans media member guy. You want to introduce yourself real quick to the people?
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Cole Thompson, at Mr. Cole Thompson on Twitter. I am the managing editor at Texans Wire. I have been covering the team full time since 2020. So right when things started to hit the fan, and we were right there for the beginning of what eventually turned out to be something really promising. But
yeah,
I have been there through the dark times. I have been there through the low times. I have seen everything from fans calling how this was the worst thing possible, where they ended up scoring a touchdown in week 17 against Indianapolis, to CJ Stroud becoming the hero, and few and far between. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson. If you also like college football, I talk college football on the side of my own YouTube channel. Love college football as much as the NFL. So that's my life. And I'm ready to talk some Texans, because it's a really interesting team in 2024. But I'm also one of those people that most fans would say is probably the most pessimistic reporter in the history of Texans football, because if I don't have them going 13-4 and instead 11-6. So that's where the problem is that I still got double-digit wins, and people say you're the worst because if you don't see a Super Bowl in 2025.
I hate that. It's fun to have you on. I know that you were very combative, and I love it. I love it so much, dude. The title of this live stream is the Offseason Expectations, but really the second half of it is called Confident or Arrogant. And that's where I really want to start with, because we don't bury the lead here on TheLead Houston. And the lead is, I wanted to get into the Jason Braddock article. Okay. I wanted to get into someone that has, probably worked with Jason Braddock or knows Jason Braddock and is a media member and writes for the Texans, or writes about them, excuse me. And what were your thoughts on Jason Braddock's article of the Houston Texans needing to shut up?
There's ways to go about it. Let me just preface this before we go any further. I will never negatively talk about people that work in this industry and put in the time and the effort the way that we do, because this is a very stressful job. It is not for the faint of heart. We work our asses off daily to be able to provide the best content out there as possible. What I will say is there are ways to go about it, and there were things that I drastically would have done differently with that article. And there is a way to where we talk about the confidence versus the arrogance of the Texans. Confidence is something that you are provided when you've earned it. And I do think that right now the Texans have earned the confidence that they are better than advertised going into this year from what we were initially thinking. So you and I have talked about this before, Harley. I think a lot of people would have been content with a 7-win season last year as a starting point for the D'Amico Ryans era. You see progress with this team moving forward in terms of their stability on offense. They have a stable rushing attack. The defense turns the corner in a similar fashion as it did in San Francisco. And there is now long-term stability that you have your franchise quarterback, you have your J.J. Watt heir apparent, and that's enough. Well, they overexceeded expectations. Stroud, nobody knew that was going to be what we saw from him last year. Nobody. And if you say that you did, there are receipts from Texans fans still to this day that had Bryce Young QB1. How dare us? We messed this up by not getting him as the first overall pick.
Well,
there's
that.
people out there that would say that. I didn't think that way at all. I thought that Stroud and Young both were quality quarterbacks, and I still think Young is going to be pretty decent in Carolina, especially working with Dave Canales. I thought that was a slam dunk hire, not the point. But nobody thought for a second that this was going to be the version we saw last year. I don't think many people thought that Tank Dell was going to come into the league and immediately take over as a wide receiver number 2. I don't think that many people thought that Dalton Schultz was as good as a tight end as he ended up being. I don't think that the way of the offensive line that was a turnstile at times was able to hold its own by protecting Stroud at the early stages of the season. And then left guard was a major position of weakness. And then you had question marks at right tackle at times. And then George Fant steps up really big. And then you get Juice Scruggs to come back, and he kind of replaces what Jarrett Patterson was already starting. So there were some question marks for this team, but they overexceeded expectations. They did. They absolutely were poised to now feel like going into this year, they are now what we think that they should be. And this is where the confidence and the arrogance part goes away. I look at where the confidence is. You had a killer offseason. Like Jeremy Fowler, I think, released an article today saying the Texans had a B- offseason.
Yes.
I think it's egregious, personally. I think that you're talking more so. I don't think it's an A+. I don't think it's an A+ at all. I think it's an A. I think it's a solid A because if you did go and add in players that are going to be here for not only the short term, but also the long term. I do knock them down from an A+ because of the Stephon Diggs contract. Like, I do. And it's not because of this. The Nico Collins deal is perfect. And honestly, that should have been always the case. Like, there was the argument going into the year. What happens if Diggs goes off and Nico has that? No, that's not the point. You want to go immediately with Nico because he's a younger option. And he also has been here through the trialing times. You want to reward those players. And for Caserio, it's a massive win because if it's a player that he scouted, and he has been talking so much about how his scouting background is something that he prides himself on. That's a player that you have as a franchise guy moving forward. But if you get rid of that contract when you had 3 years left on it, it's really only a 1-year rental. I got some questions. I wish they would have kept 1 more year on it because if it leaves the window open past 2024 with Diggs, you know that if he has a breakout year, he's going to want to get paid, and you can't afford everybody. But you do have some really good players. Danielle Hunter, Jonathan Grenard was one of the nicest players that I've ever been around inside of a locker room. And if you ask anybody in the media how kind he was and how easy he was to work with, was a big reason why we wanted to see him get paid by whoever it was. But you can't lie and say that Danielle Hunter that last year was the number 1 run defender in the NFL is not at least a considered upgrade over what you have with Jonathan Grenard in terms of his style of play. And he also gets 16 and a half sacks, and he's been a consistent 16 sack maker. Yeah. And also, it's another year with Will. And for Will, that's a guy that is still learning how to play the position. Because people forget he was an outside linebacker from the time he was in high school all the way until week 1. He barely played with his hand in the dirt at Alabama. So this is a guy that is only going to get better with more reps, and he's learning from somebody that's played both spots in a 3-4 defense and a 4-3 defense and is really damn good. The question marks are in the defensive tackle spot. I get it. There is confidence to believe that this team right now going into the year is the number 1 roster in the AFC South. There is confidence to say that going into this year with the consistency on the offense, with Bobby Slowick coming back, with the consistency of what returns defensively, with adding in players that are really good ideal fits for this defensive front 7. Like Azeez Al-Shaair, that had to be the worst kept secret in the NFL that he was coming to Houston last year. I was talking to people in Tennessee saying, dude, we know he's coming there. Like they knew all he needed to do was prove that he was good. And the Danico Autry signing is so underrated because of, if you look at the way that D'Amico loves to run his defense, it's those smaller, more agile defensive tackles that can work upfield and add that space. Fidelius Payne was one of my favorite pickups of the entire offseason because of he is so damn flexible. And Marcus Harris is another one that Marcus Harris is one of my favorite picks in the entire draft. And Kamari Lassiter is an ideal fit for this defense. You believe that this is a great team, and not only that, they're the best team in the AFC South. But you have to get past the AFC divisional round before you can talk like that you are a Super Bowl contending team. It doesn't mean that you can't be in that conversation of being a competitor, a challenger, like Buffalo is, like Cincinnati is, like Baltimore is. But Baltimore's been to the AFC Championship game. Cincinnati has been to the AFC Championship game. Buffalo has been to the AFC Championship game. Kansas City has been to the AFC Championship game. And in the 20 years that you have been around, you have never made it past the divisional round. So be humbly confident that you have turned the corner and that you have reached this new level. But where the arrogance part where it comes in with Jason Braddock, and it was a little frustrating, was there's an arrogance that I don't think is externally explained by the players. There's nobody on this roster that is saying for 1 second that they believe that they are the best in the NFL. There's nobody. There's nobody out there that has ever come out and said, we know that we are going to be a Super Bowl or bust roster. Nobody said that. Fans have. Fans have gone out and been the arrogant part, where they've come and said, we know that we're right there with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not. Like, you'd be lying to yourself if you said, oh, I get CJ Stroud or Patrick Mahomes. Both on the same contract. Both rookie deals, and you get that. You would immediately have that conversation internally that you would at least consider Patrick Mahomes. You would. You would. And you'd be absolutely flabbergasted to say that you wouldn't. You also still have to get past that point. You still have to prove that you are as advertised, and that all this offseason hype and all this promise and all this potential is certainly going to live up to expectations this year. And the only way you do so is by getting to the next stage. And so fans are the ones that are arrogant, the ones that are confident, not the players. And so the way it was phrased in the article, that's where I think that a lot of people have the problem. Because if it's saying that players are arrogant, no, they're not. I mean, Christian Harris, if you haven't checked it out, and by the way, I'm doing this because of he's a friend of mine, but also he does exceptional work. If you have the money, please go and download and get a subscription to golong.td with Tyler Dunn. It is phenomenal work. It is absolutely one of the best purchases that you will make in journalism. He is phenomenal at telling the story of what this offseason is all about. If you haven't checked it out, it is absolutely great. Christian Harris in the article says, rat poison. He takes the Nick Saban line. He knows it, because you want to know what? All this offseason hype, and you've seen this time and time and time again, players will not buy into the nonchalantness, and they don't really want it, because then what happens is when they fail or when they don't get to that point, people start pointing fingers. Well, they said this. Well, they said, no, nobody said that. The media said that. Certain plans said that. Twitter accounts said that. Players didn't say that. They didn't say that they were going out there. I mean, even Tank Dell a few weeks ago said, we're embracing the fact that we are now becoming the hunters, or something along those lines. But he didn't say that we are Super Bowl or bust. So when you say that, that's arrogance. There is a fine line of confidence and arrogance. The confidence is internally. They are a team that has turned the corner and now knows what their identity is, now has a belief, and now has a pure outlook for 2024. Fans are the arrogant ones, putting the wagon before the horse. And you know who does that every single year? Dallas. When was the last time that Dallas made it to the NFC Championship game? 1995. So don't be that. Understand that you are a quality team. You are a solid team. You have a roster that after years of mediocrity, years of complete and total implosion, self-sabotaging, error after error after error, you have finally got the pieces in play. But more needs to happen, and you have to show it on the field. What happens this year if CJ ends up taking a step back? Just even a little bit. Like his completion percentage goes down, his passer rating goes down, and they end up finishing 10-7 again. Fans, are you going to hold that same type of energy the way that you have before? Are you going to hold that same energy the way that you do with Dallas, with the way that you did with Trevor Lawrence's contract? Like, are you going to do that if there's any regression set in? Because there's a lot of reasons to believe that this team is still a playoff-bound roster, but you got to show it. So that's where it's kind of at right now, is that there's no arrogance from the team internally, from anyone that I've ever spoken to on that roster. And with that point being aside, that's where I can completely understand people immediately bashing the article, because that's not where the arrogance comes from. There is a sense of confidence internally, and there should be. But that confidence comes by what they've already seen, by what they've already done, and what they could be. But nobody internally is acting like that they are ready to be a Super Bowl team. They still got training camp to go through. They still got preseason to go through. They have injuries that could happen any point throughout the regular season that completely derail the season. Like it's the bottom line. So nobody is acting that way. So when you say that the team is acting arrogant, that's where it's a little out of left field and pretty egregiously bad reporting. But when you say the fans are arrogant and they're putting things ahead of the curve and they're absolutely putting the wagon before the horse and they're all saying, well, CJ is a top 3 quarterback already in the NFL. Stop. Just stop. Just be thankful that you're no longer the laughing stock of the league and that you're right in the middle of the hunt. Like, that's where I just want people to actually understand where this comes from. I'm not calling anyone arrogant. What I am saying is kind of take it back a little bit, just a little bit, just because of the last thing that you want to do is get your britches a little bit too rich, and then you start 0-2, and then because of that, people start coming and calling for heads.
So what I'm grabbing from this, and I felt like when I was reading Braddock's article, it felt more like he was directed towards the fans, just wasn't explicitly said, but there felt like there was a drawn implication that he was talking more to the fans. Now, even though he had, resources and interviews and the CJ Stroud stuff with Indianapolis, that he quoted, and I get that. He could say that all he wants. It just felt like to me he was talking more towards fans in the article. It definitely felt more like he was telling fans to shut the fuck up.
Okay.
That's his quite words. And
but is there anything wrong with that right now? I mean, like the whole thing with CJ calling out everyone in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Indianapolis is calling CJ out, so it's pound for pound. It's not one side or another taking control. It's both equally meeting in the middle. Now, you don't have to take the high road if you're CJ right now. You don't, because right now, in my opinion, it's a 1-1 tie, which is also why when you're EJ Speed or you're Zaire Franklin, you can also have that conversation because it's a 1-1 tie. And there are going to be Indianapolis people that will say, we had Anthony Richardson. He was running all over your ass in week 2. What if he would have played in week 18? What if he would have been back? Would we have won the division? So 1-1 tie. Go for it.
I love it. I love that there's a growing rivalry again. I also love that we're just kind of back. We've been the black eye for quite some time in the NFL. It's been rough. And I'll say this to you though. When it comes to the fans being cocky and arrogant, I kind of love it. I do. Me as an Astros fan, and I love it. Yeah. And I know the Astros fans maybe have more. They had more, because we won a World Series in 2017, and then the cheating scandal happened, and so yeah, whatever happened. But there was a title attached to you, so I could see why Astros fans were a lot more cocky and arrogant compared to the Houston Texans fans. But I don't mind being a little cocky. I don't mind being a little arrogant because a lot of them same Texans fans are also Astros fans, and I don't mind wearing a black cape. I have no problem with it. I like being a little cocky and arrogant. And, sure. Do we deserve to be cocky or arrogant as Texans fans? No, absolutely not. We've been dog shit for the past quite some time. But I've been a fan since 2002, Cole. Yeah. And it's been rough out here. Besides some glory days with Gary Kubiak and what you thought maybe could have blossomed with Deshaun Watson and whatever Bill O'Brien, it just never seemed like you had the right quarterback head coach pairing ever in your history. And it definitely feels like you finally got that with CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. And then you add more fuel to the fire by grabbing Stephon Diggs and having a Daniel Hunter and Danico Autry, and Tank Dell's going to be returning, and you got arguably the best trio of wide receivers in the NFL. The way the coaching staff is talking, hell, they're I know that you hype up your wide receivers, but man, they're like, oh man, is this the best wide receiver group in the NFL?
I mean, the whole 5 number 1 wide receivers. Okay, I understand. Noah Brown's a very nice guy. Robert Woods is awesome inside that locker room. you are not winning a lot of games when it comes to them being wide receiver one. Let's just go with
saw
that.
it last year. We literally saw it.
But again, like you get one game with Noah Brown, and that's the one game where he gets 195 yards. You call it a day. But no, you are right. I mean, this is the best wide receiver core in the NFL on paper, and well, it should. Like they should be advertised that way right now. And until further notice, like that's where these conversations are allowed to have, in my opinion.
So then, does that not give some fans a little right to show some cockiness?
I have no problem with the cockiness part. What I have a problem with is that when it comes down to being humble and you actually end up going 10-7 or 11-6. By the way, here's the main thing, guys. I'm journalistic integrity. There is no fandom for me in this. I'm going to be there in every single game, whether it is a blowout and Houston is struggling to move the ball on third down, and they call the egregious David Culley play of 2021 on that third down rushing. I'm there for that. I'm there if they go to the Super Bowl, and I'm everywhere in between. So there's no fandom for me to where I'm going to get hyped. There's reason for hypeness. There's reason to have a little bit of a cockiness. And there certainly is reason to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder when everyone called you the laughing stock of the NFL last year. Like, the part where I 100% will understand Texans fans wanting to chirp back is every single media outlet, ESPN, First Take, what else? Colin Cowherd immediately just comes to mind.
My goodness.
Will Anderson trade is going to be the one that gets Nick Caserio fired. It is the worst trade that has ever happened in this franchise. Like everyone was so against that trade. Yep. It was the right move. You are allowed to immediately say, no, it wasn't, because that's the move that got us to the playoffs. As much as CJ gets you to the postseason because of that offense, the fact that you have Will Anderson on that defense to be able to learn underneath Jonathan Grenard and learn under D'Amico Ryans, that honestly, in my opinion, is just as influential, if not more influential, to get you to the postseason. So you're allowed to have that type of shit talkiness. You are, because that's one where everyone said it was a bad deal, and it wasn't. It was the right deal. It was an aggressive move that needed to be made in a must-win situation for this franchise, and it altered the course of where Houston is today. You're allowed to talk shit about that. I 100% applaud you and think you should. What I'm saying is that the arrogance of, oh, we're a Super Bowl team. No, you have potential to get to a Super Bowl. But just like everyone else's potential, there is one man standing in the way. There is one man standing in the way in the AFC. And until you consistently knock him down, that's who you got to beat on a consistent basis. And so that's where, when you have that swag, be ready to also be humbled when it comes down to Patrick Mahomes walking into your building on a week, on what is it? You walk into Arrowhead. 15. And again, anybody who reads my work, I have Houston upsetting Kansas City. But if he comes to Houston, be ready to also take a slice of that humble pie just in case he ends up throwing for 350 and leads his team to another AFC championship game. It could happen. And again, that's the thing. That's all I'm trying to say. Have the arrogance, have the confidence, have everything that you want, because of this is where the team is finally been. And Harley, you bring it up and you're 100% right. There has not been a lot of joy around this franchise for years. There's been a lot of upside in moments, but there hasn't been this feeling. This is a unique feeling. And you talk to Texans fans, you talk to people around the league, you talk to the locker room. There hasn't been this feeling in Houston in the history of the franchise. You're 100% right. The thing is that there is a difference of putting the wagon before the horse. And that's the only thing that I argue with Texans fans all the time. It's like what I say about Trevor Lawrence. Everyone wants to go ahead and crap on me because I believe Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. He is. I'm sorry. You're gonna find out this year he is actually pretty good. You're gonna find out this year he is actually a pretty damn good passer. And that contract that he signed, it had to be done. And you want to know what? It actually, I think, is going to benefit Jacksonville. It may benefit Houston. Houston may eventually own Jacksonville every single year. But that doesn't mean that Jacksonville is not going to own Tennessee and they're not going to own Indianapolis and make this a must-win showcase when these two go toe-to-toe against each other.
I definitely got some comments coming in right now. It's making me laugh for sure. I love some combative people. I love it. I will say, Big Steve, Anytime Houston team's good enough, they want us to humble. F that. I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to be humble. Like, I'm sorry.
You don't have to right now. The thing is, you don't have to right now.
You know,
like right now, you don't have to do anything. That's the point where I think it kind of gets misconstrued. I'm never going to put the wagon before the horse, but fans can. Why? You went 10-7 last year. You were expected to get 3 wins, 4 wins. Like, that's it. Yeah, be a little boastful. Be boastful. But also, if any regression sets in, be ready to hear the shit talking from anyone else. That's just it. That's all I'm saying, is that when you are, if you are humbled, you better be willing to take it, because you're willing and more than happy to dish it out. You can't use excuses, because everyone wants to go ahead and say, well, Trevor Lawrence just sucks. Well, Trevor Lawrence just got awful. I mean, the offensive line was a turnstile at the season's ending. He was playing with a bum ankle. So that definitely was a factor into the reason why the team sucked. But at the same time, if they end up winning the game, be humble. Like, just remember, because you can talk as much as you want right now. That's fine. But when they talk back and they have backing evidence for it, you got to be willing to say, yep, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love the shit talk, but I mean, myself and Ruben are on a round table of other AFC South content creators, and you know, they are just as loud and as noxious as we are. I mean, one of them being UCF Jaguar. Shout out to UCF Jaguar. Had the viral clip last year of when the Jaguars beat the Texans.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I forgot about that.
Hey, and to me, that's a prime example of what you're saying. You know, is yeah, he was boastful. They beat us, regardless of how you feel. At the end of the day, that was an L for the Texans. Regardless of how you feel about officiating, field goals, whatever. But at the end of the day, he was very boastful. He said that they always own Houston and all this great jazz, and they had a 99% chance of making that playoffs, and
they blew it.
They blew it to the Tennessee
and everyone went to hit in the corner.
Right back to it.
They did not come out for 6 months. It was Groundhog Day all over again. Like, that was it. Again,
I love it.
That's fine, man. That's totally fine. The problem that I think that some people have, especially when it comes to me, is that you can be boastful all you want. I'm gonna call it out and see it and call it how I am, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with saying it the way that I see fit. I think Houston is a great team. I think Houston is a solid team going into this year. And I agree with Texans fans. Right now, pound for pound, you look at that roster, which quarterback would I want in the AFC? Immediately CJ Stroud. Look, what wide receiver would I take number 1 overall in the AFC South? Immediately Nico Collins. What tight end would I take number 1? Potentially, Evan Ingram has a case, but I would also lean Dalton Schultz. I would. What would I take? Where would I take a cornerback? Honestly, Derek Stingley. What would I take overall? What would I take overall in the AFC when it comes to just overall rosters? One team has a future MVP, a future first ballot Hall of Famer who's not even 30 yet. I'm taking that team. I'm taking that team until proven otherwise. I am.
Talking about how good the Houston Texans roster is, you mentioned a little bit about how good they are in terms of their roster, and I want to ask, is this Houston Texans team, let's say, top 5 roster in the NFL?
NFL is really, really hard. It is really hard.
It is.
It's top 5 in the AFC, hands down. Top 5, immediately top 5 AFC, hands down. I think that pound for pound, you can make an argument it's top 3 in the AFC. San Francisco is loaded. They are. I mean, you can say what you want about Brock Purdy, but sometimes you don't need to have elite at quarterback to be with an elite play caller that caters to their strengths. They have a top 3 wide receiver duo in the NFL, in my opinion. Like Brandon Ayuk, he deserves to get paid. He 100% deserves to get paid, and he's going to make a lot of money. Yeah, he's going to make a lot of money. Their defense is solid. Like they easily get, like Charvarius Ward is such an underrated corner. And the fact that he does not get talked about enough, they're up there. Kansas City offensive line, there's a question mark at left tackle, but they're really solid all the way around. They do like the thing about Kansas City that I love is their ability to draft around like in the late rounds, kind of like New England did when they were in their dynasty. They just found these players late on round 4, round 6. Like the fact that they were able to get Trey Smith, in round 6. Like even with the lung issue, and even though there was the concern about his ability to play because of the diagnosis, that was a steal from the second that I saw it. And immediately I groaned knowing that he was going there. So Kansas City's up there. I think that when you look at probably the Eagles, there's at least a conversation that they belong in that stratosphere. You know, Jalen Hurts maybe took a step back, but still a stable offensive line, still really talented wide receiver group, still really talented tight end, still really, really quality player that you're going to find. I mean, still really quality defensive players. They got Cooper DeJean, White Lightning. Cannot wait to see where they line him up next year. I don't care if it's safety. I don't care if it's corner. I want it to be corner so bad. But they're up there. I think Los Angeles Rams is not better than the Texans, but I do think that they have an underrated roster that is not getting talked about enough. I love the addition of Braden Fisk and Jared Verse for that defense. I will say Houston, if they're not top 5, they're probably, I would say 7. I would say right now, Baltimore has, So Jalen's pretty much beat me to the punch. I would say San Francisco, Kansas City, Baltimore, Detroit, Philly all have 100% better rosters than Houston. I think Detroit is built different. I really do. And Detroit, buddy, the fact that they got DJ Reader, to work with this man and Dan Campbell is horrifyingly awesome. It's horrifyingly awesome. It's so much fun. They're all better. I think Buffalo actually has a worse roster than Houston does. I think that right now it's quarterback and a lot of unknown. It's a lot of unknown with them, but I think they're talented. I think that when you look at, I think one roster that's not getting enough respect as well is Cleveland. And this is nothing to do with Deshaun Watson.
Sure.
Nothing to do with Deshaun Watson at all. Because easily you put. But if you took CJ Stroud and you get a healthy Nick Chubb with that offensive line and that defense going into this year, I mean they're right there in the conversation for Super Bowl contender. Like they are. So I think Houston's probably 6 or 7. I think that they're right on the outside of top 5. Easily top 3 in the AFC. I think that they're easy top 10. They're easy top 10 in the NFL. But it's a little hard to just say that they're top 5. Because if I trust San Francisco, I love Baltimore, I love Detroit's roster. Philly, it all comes down to coaching, it comes down to quarterback. And honestly, maybe you throw in, maybe you throw in Baltimore, and maybe at that point you have that conversation of like a Cleveland potentially, just because of there's fewer questions. But like honestly, it's Houston 6 or 7 for me.
Okay, yeah. So 6 or 7. All right, so about top 10 in the NFL. I agree. I think they could push into that last number 5 spot if you really wanted to. Detroit, there's some bias with me at Detroit. I love Aaron Glenn when he was here as a Texan. Yeah. I'm happy he's a defensive coordinator. I hope him a lot of success happens.
I can't wait until he becomes a head coach. Honestly can.
The writing's on the wall for him to be a head coach one day. I can't wait to see it. I'm gonna be very excited to see that. Hopefully not in our division. And with that being said, though, we're talking a little bit about the roster. I did want to get into. I reacted to a clip about a week ago, and it was Mina Kimes' podcast. And Mina Kimes was her and a co-host. I still don't know this co-host name. I've been watching these clips of them, and I there's never a name for her co-host.
Well, the thing is, she switches it up, so it's every single week it's something new. So because DJ's been on.
I feel bad.
No, but DJ's been on before, and I'm like, DJ, you son of a bitch, how dare you? Like, you got all the weird hats before I did, and so no, but like she switches it up. So I think I know which one. Are you talking about the roster? Or are you talking about the head coach?
So we're talking X Factor.
Okay,
and this was a clip about the X Factors.
I know who this was too. Who? Damn it! Now you got me thinking, because I know who it is. I know who it is. Go ahead and start. I'll tell you in a second, because I'll pull it up.
Mina Kimes had her X Factors and with the Houston Texans, and again she had a co-host. I don't know his name. His name's not displayed. I'm sorry. I feel bad for not including his name. That's just bad, I guess, on my part. But her X Factor for the Houston Texans was Derek Stingley.
Yeah. I remember the clip.
And that was like, oh, yeah, Derek Stingley. a lot of people kind of forget about Derek Stingley a little bit with all of the additions in this offseason and how everything's been going so far. And I love the Derek Stingley as an X factor. It kind of feels a little obvious too.
It was Greg Rosenthal from NFL.com.
Greg Rosenthal.
Yeah, it was Greg Rosenthal.
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, no.
Wow, that's how I've never seen him. I know who he is. Never seen him like in person.
In person. No, it's weird. It was weird because even I was like, I read your work all the time. And I listen to the Around the NFL podcast, but I never watch it. So it's like, I only know his voice.
His X factor was Azeez Al-Shaair.
Yeah, and that's mine.
Really?
And that's mine.
I need to know more about this because, you know, like, so I knew, and I'm glad you mentioned, like, it felt like the worst kept secret in the world that the Houston Texans were going to get him. I thought last year they were going to get him. Just seemed like something fell off at the very end. And Titans offered more money, and I think that's what came out. I think so.
That was part of it. Also, he wanted, like, he knew it was a 1-year deal, and it was a prove-it deal. If he proved that he could work in a defense outside of DeMeco Ryans, that's only going to up his ante for what will be the average value. Like, and that could have been anywhere. Like Houston could have been fine with having Blake Cashman back for another year, and he could have gone elsewhere, but he still would have gotten paid because if he wouldn't have been a product of DeMeco Ryans. So that was a big thing for him. And he talked about that in the in his introductory press conference when we met with him. He got an offer from Houston. There was a conversation potentially going on, but he wanted to bet on himself and prove that he could be a full 3-down linebacker, a full-time starter. Because you got to remember, he was one of the best sub-package linebackers in the NFL for years. Honestly, he was arguably the second or third best sub-package linebacker in the NFL in 2022. So if he was able to prove last season in a completely different defense with a new formation where he is playing in a 3-4, and he also is splitting reps internally, that is why I think that he wanted to bet on himself. But it also is why, for me personally, I agree with you real fast. Brandon, yes, I do think that he could be. I think last year's actually could be better than Charvarius Ward. I love everything about his tape. Honestly, if anybody asked me back when we were doing draft coverage, the one player that I said consistently going to Houston was Kamari Laster. Like if you go listen to the Locked On Texans podcast with John and Cody, I've mentioned multiple times. Like I just immediately loved the fit, loved everything about it. But back to Azeez. I know it's crazy that an off-ball linebacker is your X factor, but who's the X factor in San Francisco for that defense?
I mean,
who is it? Who is it?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
who sets it up?
I mean, look, like this. It felt like the Texans were just going to throw this money at Azeez regardless of whatever happened. Like that just felt like it. And
I figured he'd be here. No, I figured he'd be here, but the money that he got thrown, he earned it 100%, in my opinion.
You know, and then I'm like, okay, so I'm looking at Azeez, and yes, I liked him. And hearing from the clip, he mentioned that Azeez was arguably one of the best linebackers with DeMeco Ryans in San Francisco, and I'm like, wow, this guy Fred Warner's here too, huh? This other guy Dre Greenlaw's also there. Awesome. No wonder Dre Greenlaw, they were comfortable with him just filling in for Azeez.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. The Chiefs say, oh, thank you, Turf Monster. I mean,
I say literally, that was a game changer.
It was. First series, he dominated in the Super Bowl. And it's just, I'm looking at Azeez and I'm like, am I putting enough into Azeez Al-Shaair for the Houston Texans? Am I putting enough impact that he could have on this defense?
I don't think you are. Because let me explain. Here's what I love about Azeez's game. And I remember watching him when he was at Florida Atlantic. Like we're going way, way back to 2019. We're going back to when he tore his ACL. Like I love when he was in Boca Raton. He played everywhere. Like if you looked at his snap alignment count when he was at Florida Atlantic, he lined up at middle linebacker, Sam backer, weak side linebacker. So he played all three spots. He goes to San Francisco. He has to learn how to play both outside on the edge in space and the middle. He's got to be able to be the field general on certain plays. He's got to be able to work in space because that's what sub-package linebackers do. So what if, just humor me, what if something happens where Christian Harris, knock on wood, has to miss a game and you have to turn to a Jamal Hill or a Henry To'oTo'o and they're only good at the middle backer spot. Or for Azeez, it's just going to be easy for him to move to the weak side. He can just play in space. He can still be effective in coverage. He can still be a delayed blitzer. He still will make the tackles that are necessary. He basically is going to do what Blake Cashman did last year, but I think it's at a higher end level. And Cashman, honestly, there were so many times last year where you looked at Cashman and the way that he just stepped up for this defense. That was a big reason why Houston felt confident. They were able to go ahead and get critical stops, and they were able to get the ball back to CJ in the offense. They were able to score because Cashman was stepping up and making plays wherever it needed to be. And that's the exact same thing that I think Al-Shaair can do, is that if you lose Christian Harris for a game, or there's something going on where his, lack of play, or there's a setback, he can go ahead and play in that space. And then you can allow your other linebacker to take them over the Mike spot. And that's okay. And because of that position flexibility, that's what makes him so unique. I love everything about the fit, the way he plays the game, the way that he flies to the football downfield, his read and reaction time, his IQ, and he's done it everywhere. And there's a backing that shows he's been successful at the Sam, he's been successful at the Mike, he's been successful at the Will, he's been successful as a blitzer, he's been successful in coverage, he's been successful with delays, he's been successful not falling for double moves or counterattacks. He stays and he plays a certain brand of football, and it works. And if you got that guy that can play anywhere in that back seven, that's where it does change the game, in my opinion. So again, defensively, there has to be, I think, a little bit more of an upgrade. And honestly, you may ask more from the defense for the linebackers this year, because if you don't know what you're going to get in the defensive tackle spot, you don't. I hope Danico ends up living up to the hype. I really do. I think that Danico is one of the league's most underappreciated, undervalued, under the radar type of players. But he also is coming from a 3-4 defense where he was a defensive end. And so he's got to shift back inside. Do they only play him 20% of the snaps? Foley Fotakowski comes on over. How does he fit in? Is he going to be good? Also, what happens if you have to play Kurt Heinisch and he starts to struggle? And then you got to turn to Marcus Harris. There's reasons to believe that losing Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins is going to create a little more yards after contact for running backs and potentially quarterbacks. And a guy like Al-Shaair flying the football down the field, you're going to need him to step up more. And honestly, that's, I think, a big reason why he is an X factor, is because of you used to be able to trust what that defensive front was going to do, especially in the interior. You are kind of going in blind right now until you see it on paper, but you're not going in blind with Al-Shaair. You're just not.
Interesting. I need to put more. I guess I need to put more stock into Azeez Al-Shaair, man. I've heard you now talk about it. I've heard Cody Stutes talk about this, man. I'm hearing Greg Rosenthal have him as an X factor for this defense. I see a lot of fans get caught up in the display the notion for me. Just dismiss it. 4-2-5, 4-3. We don't have a third linebacker. That's numerous amount of comments, is the worries around where's our third linebacker. What do you say to that question?
Jamal Hill could be it. The thing about him that's really interesting is that he is a former safety that is going to be playing linebacker, so it's close to the line of scrimmage. The thing that's really interesting, and I don't know how many people know this about Christian Harris, but does anybody remember what he was when he was in high school?
Safety, no?
He was safety. And Nick Saban said, no, you're too fucking slow to play safety. You're moving to linebacker. Get over it.
4.46.
That's too slow to play safety in the SEC and Alabama. And he was too stocky. So it's like, listen, no, you play a linebacker, and I'm going to use that to an advantage. So maybe that's Jamal Hill this year. Henry To'oTo'o is a good tackler. He is. He's good for special teams. You want him to be probably more so like that depth piece, not really playing that third linebacker spot. Yeah. But if you need to, could work in a pinch. It's kind of a blessing in disguise to where you have all these options that could make some sense. I think that also when you look at Neville Hewitt, in a bind, if you really need he's back on this team because of what he does tackling and special teams. Yes. He does. That's where he breaks. Jake Hansen again somehow continues to make the roster, which is awesome because of honestly, he is the feel-good story for smaller dudes like me that just
Yeah.
want to play football. Like, that's the guy that we look up to. Like, I'm 5'7" and a $162 wet. Like, I am 100% rooting for Jake Hansen every single year because he's 5'11", going out there making plays. You also get Max Tooley, the BYU linebacker.
There we go.
You know, that's somebody that's getting a lot of hype. Tariq Barnes coming on over from Illinois. Like, it's going to be a really interesting camp. It is at linebacker because of there could be that third guy. I think right now Jamal Hill is probably your favorite just because of what he is and what he could be. What I'm really interested, though, is seeing what another year in this system looks like for Henry To'oTo'o, though. But again, the thing is that you know this is going to be a defense that will play 3 linebacker sets probably more than most teams out there. But here's what's going to be really interesting to me, Harley. Are they going to be playing 3 linebacker sets because if they don't have a good X factor when it comes to the nickel to where they're going to have to do that? Or are they playing 3 linebacker sets because they just really like their linebackers? And either way, is that a negative? Like, is that a negative if you have a linebacker that can play in coverage so well that you don't need to really worry about that nickel defender? And again, also, what does that say about Kamari Lassiter? If he, as a guy that many people thought was going to be a nickel defender only, except for yours truly, because I'd said a million times, it's not going to be a nickel. It's going to be on the outside. It's going to be really damn good on the outside, especially for this team. Especially for this defense, really good on the outside for this defense. What does that say about your nickel position? Like, what does that say about Kamari Lassiter and how well he is actually adapted to this defense?
You know, me and Ruben were on Bleacher Report talking some Texans, and I feel like I'm reading way too much into this. I know I'm reading way into much what I'm about to say, but I just found it weird that Houston Texans post some clips from OTAs, minicamp, you know, the regular. And I see, you know, Jeff Okudah dive at Tank Dell and bring Tank Dell to the ground. I also see D'Amico Ryans mentioned that he doesn't want his players touching grass. And am I just reading too much into that? Ever since then, I am seeing more snaps and reps for Kamari Lassiter on the outside corner position. And it's like in for a penny, in for a pound kind of. I'm reading too much into this, am I? I mean,
Harley, Kamari Lassiter has been one of the best defensive players at practice. That's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to, in my opinion. The fact that he is doing well on the outside to where you have 2 former first-round picks that were brought in for a second opportunity to better their chances and fit this brand of defense underneath D'Amico Ryans, and the kid from Georgia who did not know that his head coach went to college in the same town where he grew up. By the way, that still is a top 5 moment for me in the history of my journalistic career. Just seeing his face in that moment, that still is top 5 for me. The fact that he has transitioned that well, that's, I think, where you really feel good. That, to me, is the big thing, is that you have a guy that is just already flourishing in this defense opposite of Derek Stingley Jr. And again, what that does, it's not a necessary problem right now. Because when I look at maybe, just maybe, an injury occurs during training camp where you got to make a move. Where you got to be able to, where there's still free agents out there. There are. And I'm not saying that you need to go out and add in a safety, or you need to go after a Xavier Howard, or you need to go after a Stephon Gilmore just to be able to make sense. I mean, I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying, well, like Xavier Howard, we're not going to get into that. That's
we're not going to touch that.
Holy shit, that was bad. I'm sorry. I don't even care cuss, but holy shit. Anyway, but if you're doing well, you're in a good spot. Here'd be the coolest thing of all, though. If your 2 young players that you drafted for your secondary that fit this mold, and Kalen Bullock and Kamari Lassiter get to start, and then you have to have that conversation of what do we do with Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie? Because moving them down into the nickel may not be the worst thing. It honestly might, because of both have experience playing in the nickel at some point in their careers, whether it be when Jalen Petrie won Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. I'm going to re-say that one more time. Won Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year as the star position in the defense underneath Dave Aranda. And also Jimmy Ward had to move to nickel in his final year in D'Amico's defense when he was in San Francisco because of how well Taloa Tafunga was playing. Like, that was a big thing. Like, that's just it, man. Like, that's just it. I don't know what else you really want to say. Like, it's not a problem. It isn't. And the good news is that even if it were to be a problem, like it still is it's OTAs. It's mandatory minicamp. You are way reading too much into this, man. Like you are. And
sure.
again, it's okay to. It's okay. That's what the off season's for. That seeing these moments where you actually have something to talk about is sometimes a lot better than having nothing to talk about and just trying to come up with BS so as much as possible.
I just was like, I haven't seen no Jeff Okudah anymore. And then the Texans were like, here's your clip, Harley, of him shutting down Andrew Beck. I'm like, oh, great job, buddy.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Did better than the Colts in week 18, apparently. But I was just wondering that, but I did enter minicamps OTAs with and in this offseason with the worries around the secondary, and to see Kamari Lassiter, I mean, just like you say, flourish in this secondary, and you just said it, been the best player from what you've seen so far on your eyeballs.
I won't say he's the best because I think that's far-fetched, but he has been 100%. He's been one of the most consistent players. That's for sure. These are just what ifs, but if Kalen Bullock solves the cover 3 high cover safety that D'Amico Ryans I would assume, love to get back to that San Francisco kind of style of defense where Kalen Bullock can play free safety, deep free safety, which he did very well at USC. Sure of the tackling, but hey, we love our safeties with tackling issues. We love that. Yeah,
the Texans have a lineage.
We don't need to, though. That's the problem, Harley. We don't need to. Like,
true.
He's so fun to watch in coverage. He's so fun to watch in coverage.
He's a center fielder, man.
I have to do this a lot when I'm watching him come downfield tackling. It's hard. He's so fun. And honestly, if he control, here's the best part. And I heard John Harris say this, so I'm going to steal a line from him. He's not out in LA anymore with tofu burgers. He's in Houston where they got great barbecues. So he's going to bulk up. He's going to gain a little bit of extra muscle and put some meat on those bones. But he's a 6'3" center fielder that makes these incredible coverage rates, and he tracks a football like a wide receiver. I mean, he's a DB that's tracking a football like a wide receiver in coverage. That's
exciting.
That's something to hold your hat on. That's something to be very excited about as a player. Got to get better. Got to be more well-rounded. But again, I mean, there was times where, and I don't know if this is Oxford's just saying I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I'm getting fired. Might as well just try something new. But there were times he was playing nickel and he was playing outside quarterback at USC, and that I would not do that. Sure. I would not do that. But the fact that he has that position flexibility and just knows what they're looking for in a man coverage defense, there's something to be said about that. There is. And I do agree with you. The thing that you like about this secondary is there are question marks. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Houston stressing. I know that you be blessing all the time, man. There are reasons to still have question marks and potentially being stressing with this defense at times, especially in the secondary. There are, but that's the beauty of this team right now, is that there's so much unknown that even if it is unknown, there's also the unknown of it potentially being really positive too. And that is me with the most optimistic view in my pessimistic ways of talking about this team half the time. Is as much negative there could be as much positivity.
It's true. And, we're making our way around the rookie class. I might as well you mentioned John Harris. I saw a comment earlier talking about Blake Fisher. Man, I was at the draft party, and I'm next to Sean Pendergast, and I see Greg Grissom come up. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but whatever, I'll say it. And I see Greg Grissom come up, few picks, like 4 or 5 picks before, and I see him go right. I'm right next to Pendergast. He goes right to Pendergast's ear. Blake Fisher. Pendergast looked at him. Oh, Notre Dame guy. Okay, a little bias there. All right, man. And I was like, a right tackle. And then I hear John Harris go, it wouldn't shock me if you took Titus Howard's job next year. And I went, whoa. Are we down on Titus Howard? Is there an implication that the Houston Texans maybe are having a little bit of an extension remorse? Not buyer's remorse, extension remorse, maybe? It makes me wonder. It creates a lot of question for fans.
I don't want to go that far. I know. And personally, I don't want to go that far because I don't have that information. So I don't have that information. I'm not going to report anything that I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah.
What I will say is, and the thing that I will say about the pick when it comes to Blake Fisher, you have to be good on the offensive line if you want to be successful. People all the time want to talk about the highlight wide receivers, the running backs that run crazy, the quarterbacks that put up the godly numbers. You win football games in the trenches.
True.
You win football game. If you do not have an offensive line, you do not have shit. You don't. And the same goes for a defensive line, but honestly, an offensive line. You can't trust going into this year with what is the expectations to not have a contingency plan just in case anything happens to either Laremy Tunsil or Titus Howard. You can't. You have to feel confident in having a great swing tackle. And honestly, to be completely fair, like Nick said it best, you in the NFL these days, you have to have 3 tackles. You have to have 3 tackles because if you don't know when injuries are going to stockpile, and you have to be feeling confident when the next guy comes up. And that's what Blake Fisher is. He's a guy that has 3 years of starting experience at Notre Dame. He was great as a run blocker in the last 2 years. Really good with object estimate. The part that's really interesting to me as well, he caught fire his first year that he walked onto campus. Like, he's the first freshman in Notre Dame history to start at left tackle. You don't do that at a place like Notre Dame if you are not talented as all hell. You do not do that. And yeah, he gets hurt, and it leads to Joe Alt becoming a future All-American on that side. But it's a good thing because then you move into the right side. So it feels like right now he is the right tackle because if he's only played right tackle. But it's kind of like saying a few years ago, like Penei Sewell when he was playing left tackle at Oregon, and then they said we're going to move you to right tackle, and hopefully it'll be fine. Like, yeah, it was. It took a couple games, and that doesn't always happen that way, and that's fair. It doesn't always happen that way because of people want to think, oh, you're on the right tackle spot, so that means that you're the worst of the 2 tackles. Bullshit. Bullshit. That's not the NFL anymore. You got to be good at both. You got to be good at both tackle spots if you want to be great. Like that. Like that's what it has to be. I think that he is not ready to start this year. I don't. I think that right now there is a lot of intrigue with him, but I do think by 2025 there is going to be a legit conversation. Do we actually have a competition for right tackle? I do, and I know that Jalen in the comments has said this. He's not wrong. There have been many people that I've spoken to in the NFL draft circles that believed he would have been a bona fide first-round pick next year. And if that's going to be the case and he gets to learn underneath Laremy Tunsil and he gets to be a part of this system where he builds on his reps and he gets to stay a little bit more stable, that's good. Titus Howard, the problem is that there are injury concerns. It's just the bottom line. There are. And he's also a tackle. He is. Like this is where I'm going to say when it comes to Titus Howard, and I think it's very clear because you look at his Twitter bio, it says it too. He is a right tackle. He is a right tackle. He is not a guard. He is not a guard. He is a tackle. But you can't feel confident going into this year with what happens when they haven't played a full season. And he hasn't played a full season in any of his seasons. And he's had 2 season-ending injuries. And it's a team that's not changing its goals. They're not. They're not going to say, well, we're pivoting off of competing for a Lombardi trophy and making it to New Orleans and finally getting to an AFC championship game because we lost our right tackle. No. And a big reason why they were able to have a quality year last year was because George Fant was able to step up and play right tackle, which is why he got paid this year. So it's a really good insurance piece for this team long-term. It's a really good quality swing tackle just in case. I think that what you're doing is you drafted him because if you know that a year from now you might be having this conversation, and a year from now he might be up to the level of what Joe Alt is right now, what JC Latham is right now, what who was the other big offense? Olu Fashanu coming out of Penn State is right now. He may be at that level. He's defined as a project with a lot of intrigue, and that's good. That is a very good thing to have. But right now, I think that number one, 100% Titus Howard going into the year is the starting offense, is the starting right tackle. You have to have a backup plan. And also you have to have a backup plan with Laramie. You do. And I think that was a good thing with Blake Fisher. Like there were people who were arguing, there were so many people who were arguing during the draft, like whenever we saw the mock drafts, why are they mocking Jordan Morgan to the Texans at 23? Like why are they mocking offensive tackle? And everyone was just cackling, and everyone was just saying, "Oh, this is BS. Like, why are you drafting?" You need offensive line. You do. Like everyone says, like when it comes to recruiting for college football, take a quarterback every single year, draft an offensive lineman every single year. Like every single year, draft an offensive lineman. Do it. Draft a defensive lineman. You can never have too much depth at either spot. You can't. And so I didn't like the pick at 23. Round two, when there were multiple round drafts in any one of my mock drafts, I always mocked an offensive lineman because you need one. You do, and that's really where they are. I saw a comment earlier on the Darius Henderson being a part of the best offensive line in the NFL last year. Okay, Frank, let him make the roster first. Okay, let the last pick make the roster first.
I just brush off it. No offense.
Let's let Darius Henderson, who was a 1-year starter at Michigan, before that played at Arizona State. Did not play at Michigan. Was not developed by everyone. Let him play 1 full year at Arizona State. Let's figure it out. let him make the roster. Let him do that.
We're having a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you coming on. We're about to wrap this thing up.
I'm enjoying.
You mentioned your X Factor.
I said you can still have me for another 20 minutes if you want. I'm enjoying this actually.
I mean, I have no problem with it.
I honestly thought it was gonna be like 30 minutes in. I was like, I need to make dinner, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, fine. I'll do it later.
Okay.
I need a little bit longer.
We've talked X Factors. We talked about whether or not the Texans are a top 10, top 5 roster in the NFL. The Super Bowl odds, man. I know you love having the conversations around the Texans and the Super Bowl, and I know you love pissing off my fans. I know you love it. And this is what you live for. This is your purpose in life. And I'm here for it. I'm here for angry fans right now. Super Bowl odds, man. Last I checked, the Houston Texans, I believe I want to say they were like 12th or something.
They were 10 or 11, I think maybe 12.
You know, so
they were top 5 in the AFC. I know that. I think
so. According to Sportsline, I have a graphic from Sportsline that came up. They were 9th. All right, and they're below the Cowboys.
Okay.
The Eagles.
Okay.
The Bills. Detroit.
Yeah.
Bengals.
Okay.
Ravens.
Okay.
And of course, the Chiefs and then the 49ers. Do you think the Houston Texans should be a little higher on this list?
Yes, but not much. I'm going to be completely transparent. We are not talking. There is a reason to be concerned because of the injuries to stockpile up with him. Healthy Joe Burrow is keeping Cincinnati in the postseason picture, and he's 100% keeping Cincinnati in the Super Bowl picture. He's 100% doing it. He is. I don't care. And they're going all in this year. Like honestly, I get it. They let go of Joe Mixon. They let go of Joe Mixon for Zach Moss. Moss is a good running back. He is. I like Chase Brown. I loved Chase Brown when he was coming out of Illinois a few years ago. I love when he was great. But they still have T. Higgins. They still have Jamar Chase. They still have a very good underrated defense. They do. Yeah, I knew Cole was a Bengals fan. I knew. Nope. I'm not a Bengals fan. I'm not. If anything, I am a T. Higgins fan. I love T. Higgins tape when he was coming out of class. I love Logan Wilson. I love like Logan.
Yes.
I love.
I wanted him so bad.
I love Logan Wilson.
Pause. Good Lord.
DJ Turner. I love. I'm blanking on his name on the top of my head. The safety that came a few years ago from Michigan that's also on their defense. I loved his tape coming out. Thought I was freaking stud. They're a dangerous team. They are. When they're healthy, they're really good. Like Amarius Mims. Here's how freaking stupid Georgia is when it comes to their offensive linemen. There's just Amarius Mims played 8 games last year and he got drafted 18th overall. Like he wasn't even a full-time starter. He started 8 games his entire career, and he doesn't have to start this year because they have Trent Brown. Because they brought in Trent Brown and they still have Orlando Brown, and they have a pretty decent interior offensive line. Like they're really well put together in that spot. So if they're healthy, with the way that division is going to cannibalize each other every single week when they play against one another. Pittsburgh's got like Pittsburgh honestly is a pretty good team too, but they got such a shit end of the schedule. Like holy crap, that thing is brutal. Yeah. That's why Pittsburgh is probably finally losing more than they're going sub 500 this year underneath Mike Tomlin because of that schedule in the back half is so brutally awful. But like, you look at where Cincinnati is as a roster, they easily could. They easily could still be right in the hunt of things. I think Cleveland, they're right in the hunt of things. Like it all comes down to Watson. It does. It all comes down to Watson. But holy crap. Adding in Jerry Jeudy with Elijah Moore, with Amari Cooper. And there was this one thing I did see, and it was stupid. And it was from our friend, Joe DeLeon. So this is where I found it. There was a rumor that potentially Brandon Ayuk for Amari Cooper, and they don't do a signing trade, and they get extensions. And imagine Brandon Ayuk with that offense.
It's fun.
That's a cheat code, in my opinion. That's just a cheat code. And that offensive line, if it's fully healthy, is one of the best in the NFL. And Nick Chubb, when he's fully healthy, is a top 3 running back. And that defense, that secondary is so damn good. Like Greg Newsome was one of my favorite. Greg Newsome, like every single year, I'll do like a draft thing for Texans Wire or for wherever I'm working.
Newsome.
Greg Newsome was number 1 on my draft crushes, like Mike Stinger still was this past year. Like number 1, I wanted him. And you know what was crazy? Martin Emerson was right up there too. So like both of them, and then you add in Denzel Ward, and you have such a good defensive backfield. Like they're really good. The Jets, Stresson just brought this up. Like the Jets are good. Like they are. Like you may not like it. They absolutely are so loaded top to bottom everywhere except for quarterback. And that's where you have the question mark, but they have arguably the best running back that's emerging in Breece Hall. They still have a great wide receiver. They're so well put together. And then Houston's right there with them. Yes. Honestly, they are. The AFC is just so freaking loaded. Like it really is. Like the NFC, it's 2 teams in my opinion right now. And until freaking someone steps up into 3rd place, it's Detroit and it's San Francisco. Yeah. And that's it. And the AFC, you can make an argument of how many teams I could see make it out of here. So it's like, I can't say that they are like 9's fine for me. 9 really is fine for me. If anything, I'm wondering what are the odds for the other teams that are sitting behind them? Like how close is Cleveland? How close is New York? Like how close are those? Because they're right there in terms of where I think that they could easily see them coming out of anywhere. Like easily I could see Houston being in the AFC Championship game. In fact, I think when I was on the other podcast, the one that we did together not too long ago, with the other guys, the H-Town crew, I think I said that they were going to be in the AFC Championship game. And I could easily see it. I honestly feel more confident that the Texans are in the AFC Championship game than CJ Stroud wins MVP this year. I'm that much more confident in that prediction. But I could also see Houston lose in the AFC wildcard round. And they lose to a team that goes to the Super Bowl. Because that's how good the AFC is. So it's like, do I like that they're 9? I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with them also being maybe 8 or 7. I don't think that they are top 5 just yet. And I think you got to prove it. I think that once again, you got to prove that last year was not a fluke, that the additions that were added in are going to be benefactors and they're not going to ruin morale inside the locker room. And I don't think that they will. I don't think that there's any reason to believe that they will. But until I see it, I think 8, 9, 10, that's really where I'd put him right now. And I feel confident in saying that.
Yeah, I like that. But right below us is we're plus 1,600 at 9. And right below us is the Green Bay Packers at 1,900. And then below the Packers are the Jets at 2,400. You mentioned the Cleveland Browns. They are, wow, they're right down there.
17?
They're at 4,000 plus 4,000 odds, tied with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, because if one team has a quarterback and the other one doesn't. Like, that's what it comes down to. And thank God Nick was able to pull off the fleece deal that got it done. But holy, seriously. I mean, if you can imagine Cleveland right now with Caleb Williams as the potential quarterback over to Deshaun Watson. And again, you know what's crazy is that Deshaun still might be something. Like he might be something. We don't know. But they're so good everywhere else. It's like you're not asking him to be elite. You're asking him just to get the job done, stay healthy for a full season, and not make a dumbass mistake. That's what Cleveland is for me. And again, their team is good. They really, and that's the AFC in general. That's great value. Plus 4. See, and now there's gonna be someone in the comment section saying, "Oh yeah, Cole's a Bengals fan. Now he's a Browns fan because he's gonna place 4,000 plus 4,000 on Cleveland to go to the Super Bowl." It's just too damn good of odds.
I mean, how much confidence do you have in Deshaun Watson's bounce back? Not only
three.
That's the only problem. And then I know you're talking about Nick Chubb, but aging running back with another knee injury.
I trust Nick Chubb coming back more than Deshaun Watson coming back at this point.
Yeah, okay, I'll agree with you on that because Nick Chubb is a freak. I will give that. But, I know Deshaun Watson's a freak too, but I don't know. I don't know about the football field.
The thing with me with the Texans is, again, their schedule is manageable at times, and then it gets brutal at times. And it's going to there's going to be a roller coaster. It's going to be a roller coaster of emotions. It is this year. I really think it's going to be a roller coaster of emotions. Oh, you're just admitted already. I see that. It's red. It's not orange. It's red.
I'll be honest.
It looks
got a little Bengal brown shade to it.
I will say my first car was the same color as the Bengals orange. So I mean. I'll admit that.
Well, Cole, how do you feel about the Texans going into the jungle last year when the Bengals were on a hot streak and the rookie quarterback diced up the Bengals? Now, we don't remember the fourth quarter collapse that almost happened. But regardless, we dominated for about 3.5 quarters. I don't know what happened at that fourth quarter.
Yeah. I kind of expected it. Not going to lie. After what happened the week before when they found a way with 37 seconds left to come back and beat Tampa Bay. Yeah. Honestly, at that point, that nothing shocked me anymore. But people talk all the time about what was the game that made you wake up and go oh yeah, this team is finally real. That Tampa Bay game. After the Tampa Bay game, and that's just looking at it from a 32 team perspective, seeing a quarterback that confident and that unrattled to do what he did in 39 seconds or 59 seconds. That to me will forever be the moment where I was like, yep, this team is different. This team is a postseason team. So any other game that happened, it didn't matter to me. Whatever. So be it. Screw it. Even the what's it called? The Browns game when when they didn't have Jonathan Grenard and they lost on Christmas Eve. Yeah, it's whatever, so be it. It's not that big of a deal. I know what this team is when they're fully healthy. Do any other teams have elite pass rushers except the Texans? Yeah, plenty of teams have elite pass rushers. Yeah, Ken, a lot of teams have elite pass rushers. Now, do any have one with an emerging superstar like Will Anderson that maybe is the 14th or 15th best pass rusher in the NFL after 1 year and a top 10 guy in Danielle Hunter? Probably not. But, I mean, the New York Jets have a really good pass rush with what they added in Hassan Reddick, and then Jermaine Johnson hit his stride last year. Yeah. Adding in Bryce Huff to Philadelphia is only going to do wonders for them. I think Cincinnati is extremely underrated with Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. Now, it's Hendricks. Now, don't get me wrong. I immediately would take the Tex. I would take Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. over Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson, but don't tell me for 1 second that there is not reason to believe Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson are not a good duo. Better trio of pass rushers. It also depends what you think of when it comes to, Danico Autry. Is he going to be playing 30% of his reps at defensive end and 30% of his reps at defensive tackle? What's going to happen? Watt and Highsmith, 100% to me is the best duo in the NFL right now. I
think so too. Easy.
I think it's far and away. There's not even a second question about that. Easily the best duo in the NFL right now, in my opinion. But, just because you have two really good pass rushers doesn't mean everything. It doesn't. If you only have great pass rushers and no interior pressure, all they're going to do is just going to stay away from the outside and just run out the middle. 10 out of 10. That's a thing that people got to really look into. And that's, if anything, that's one of the main reasons why I can't say that Houston right now had an A+ offseason. Because the two things that worried me, number one was the deal when it came to the Stephon Diggs. It was the Stephon Diggs. I get it. I do, but you could have drafted a wide receiver then. You could have said 23rd and drafted a wide receiver, 5-year deal, and then sign sign Nico. It would have been fine. It would have been great. 5 years, 1-year rental, fine, whatever. And then you didn't get, and then you don't re-sign Sheldon Rankins, which was, in my opinion, it was a really close deal getting done from everyone that I spoke to, and they just couldn't agree on the last bit of things. And then you trade Malik Collins, and you say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're gonna take fully Fulikowski, and we'll figure out the rest later. Don't worry, it's all good. So that's why I have an A- for them right now. It's not because I don't think that they're good. It still was a great offseason, but there are some question marks. And again, you can have a really good outside pass rush. You don't have a good interior pass rush, you're in a lot of trouble. That's just the bottom line, people. It is.
Shout out Khalil Davis.
I will say, I do think Khalil Davis is going to be really interesting. I'm really, really, really excited. And this is painful to me because I'm an Alabama grad and I'm supposed to hate this college, but I don't. I don't hate anything. I'm really excited to see Marcus Harris in this defense. I am. Yeah. If he can stay healthy, what he did last year transitioning to a new defensive front underneath Ron Roberts, I thought was really, really, really good. So I'm really excited to see what he does with D'Amico. I want to know what they do with Fidelius Payne. I do.
I like Fidelius.
I want to see how they utilize him. We are getting a lot of value from Diggs, from him mentoring our young wide receivers. Okay, stressing. At the same time, yeah, he maybe is mentoring the wide receivers, but you also can say Nico could mentor a young wide receiver that's getting drafted in the second round in a very good wide receiver draft class for a fraction of the value, and you would have had that second round pick next year. There's a ton of things that go into this. Yeah, it's great to add in Diggs. I would give this a solid A if they still voided the contract, but kept him for one more year on the deal. So if instead of after 2024 he was a free agent, he was a free agent after 2025, I would have been fine with that. And honestly, it would have made sense with giving up a second round pick that wasn't even yours to begin with. That's the fun thing. That's what it is. That's what it is. And Nico doesn't know half the stuff at Diggs. Okay, well, Nico also has proven in 1 year that he can be a number one receiver, and you're going to take reps away from him. So what happens when, again, these conversations go up internally about it? The one thing I will say is, regardless of what anyone says, CJ is going to command respect from everyone inside that locker room. He's not going to give a flying care in the world if someone's pissed off that they don't get enough targets. He's not. And he's made it clear. He has made it clear that he does not care. The number one receiver on that day, the one that's open, is getting the football. If Diggs isn't getting open, he ain't getting the football. He doesn't care. He wants to win. And that's what's going to happen. And I think that is one thing that I think any fan should appreciate right now about where the Texans are, is his ability to go and take off that reps. To just immediately take over that offense and act that way. And just year two, have that attitude. Yeah, that's it. He does not this is team oriented first. Team oriented first. That's it.
I mean, I know we talked about how silly his 5 wide receiver comment was, but I think that's kind of the implied conclusion. It reminded me, I forgot who brought this up, but the Eli Manning comment. It was Plaxico Burress. He was on with I forgot the guy that used to be with Boomer Esiason, but they used to partner up and have a podcast together. He's based out of New York. He's a New York guy, but he had Plaxico Burress with him. They do a show together, and Burress talked about Eli Manning, and Eli Manning said, Burress asked him, "Hey, how many times would you try to give me the ball?" Or some form of question like that.
Yeah.
And Eli Manning said, "I throw to whoever's open." And that's what kind of felt like with CJ Stroud. I know it sounds a little silly, sounds a little goofy saying, we got 5.
Silly at all. It's what's right.
It is.
It is. I don't give a flying care in the world how much you're making. If you're not open, I'm not getting you the football. If you're not the one that's finding reps to be able to get on the field, I don't care if you play 30 reps in a game. If you're open on 15 of them and you get 15 targets, you better make the most of those 15 catches. Because if he's getting open on the other 15, I'm going to him. That's just it. And you're right. I think the 5 number 1 wide receiver comment was a little out of left field. It was. What it meant was, more importantly, you have a wide receiver that could get open, and you have another one that can easily take over a game. It may be one game where they're 125 receiving yards, and the next game they get 30. But everyone is going to have at least one game where they're getting the ball and they're feeding the rock. And that includes also, I think, Dalton Schultz. And that also, I think, includes potentially John Mechie if he stays healthy. I think also it can include Joe Mixon and targets out of the backfield. I think that's more so what it is it's about getting the ball to the open guy. I don't care what you're making. But again, if it's all about when it comes to, you don't really care who gets the ball and how many times you get open. Can you get open with a guy that maybe is on a rookie deal for 5 years to where it's team friendly instead of paying what you do for Stephon Diggs and giving up a pick? Like, that's it. And I'm nitpicking here. I am it's like, honestly, it was a good move. It's a good move for a veteran feel inside that locker room, for a player that is going to better this offense, but it is nitpicking. It is. And again, this is why also I'm someone who talks about football and does it at a somewhat decent level. I'm not signing millions of dollars and betting my life on the line when it comes to being a front office man.
I mean, I try to ignore the nitpicking, but when you look at 23 and the Jags pick Brian Thomas Jr., I'm not saying the draft falls exactly how it could have, but you never know.
Do you want him for the offense though? Like, that's,
I know.
Like that's the thing. Like personally for me, like this is where like I kind of like had a little bit of that attitude where I was right, but I wasn't. I'm so much higher on Adonai Mitchell than anybody else that I know. I love Adonai Mitchell. I thought he was the most slept on one. Like you have your top 3. Number 4 for me was Adonai Mitchell. And and Texans fans, that they may not like this. They may say, "Oh no, now Cole's a Colts fan." The fact that he's with Indianapolis.
Here we go.
The fact
you almost got the name already.
I know. Just the fact that he's with Indianapolis is just it would piss me off knowing that, because of how much I loved him if I was just a straight fan. But like the fact that he was available, pick 42. Just still to this point, it's like, yeah, whatever. You can sit him for a year if you want to. I mean, don't get me wrong.
You know why they didn't pick him, Cole? Because he had diabetes, Cole. That's why. Goodness gracious. We had to watch the diabetes. That's what it was. Okay.
I mean, to be fair, and Stressen's bringing this up, whatever. I'm not trying to be very stressing, but you're right. He wasn't Brian Thomas was not the wide receiver for this offense that I think was needed, especially when you have a tank down there. But yeah, Mitchell with Indianapolis is, if he stays healthy. If Anthony Richardson stays healthy, and I was high on Richardson too coming out. I loved Anthony Richardson coming out. I was so much higher on Anthony Richardson than anybody else that I knew.
Adonai Mitchell had to leave Georgia because we got that cornerback Kamari Lassiter, and he was running from the smoke. Now he can't run no more because
He
he's
he was running from a BS offense that didn't cater to any of his strengths. That was 100% it.
Let me push my agenda, Cole.
Push your agenda all you want, dude. I'm just telling you that he left because he wanted to get the football and immediately goes to Sark's offense.
He can't leave anymore. He can't leave no more.
You can't hurt me in practice anymore, Kamari. Now you can just hurt me when we go play against each other in division.
This was fun, Cole. I appreciate you coming on, man. We've been on for quite some time. I appreciate the amount of people that are in here watching. And if you're still watching, you're a trooper. Go ahead and smash that like button. Easiest smash of your life. Comment a swarm. If you ain't got nothing else better to do, just drop a swarm real quick in the comment section. It's easy as that. Appreciate y'all. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Just past 8.5. Actually, a few days ago.
Did you really, dude? That's awesome. That is awesome.
Man. It's been a long ride, man. It's been a crawl.
Going over to Landry's show after this. You can go talk about it. Literally, I'm very lucky to do what I do. I appreciate it that I get to cover the team and I get to be a voice inside the locker room. But the thing I love about this fan base, the thing that I love about everyone that does these podcasts, they put a lot of detail into it. They do their research. They show that true fandom that has been missing in Houston. So make sure that you guys are subscribed to Harley. Make sure that you guys are subscribed to Landry. Make sure you guys are subscribed to Cody. And Cody gets to go inside the locker room. So that's really, really good. Like, that's another blessing that you have on the side, as well as Landry and what he does and all the other podcasts out there that do love this. You won't find a more interactive community, and I think a more seasoned community that cares about their fan base and is willing to go to podcasting and do these type of interviews and give the type of resources that you won't get, like you will at 610, the way that you will at 790, the way that you will at 97.5, the way that I do on my own channel and stuff like that. By the way, if you want to follow me, my own channel at Mr. Cole Thompson, that's also on YouTube. It's the exact same. I do have a podcast. It's just on college football because I love college football. But anyways, whatever it is, make sure that you guys are following everyone that covers this team, because this is a great fan base that puts in so much effort to see their team be successful. That's Harley does it. The other podcast I'm blanking on because I've been talking for literally an hour and 15 minutes. I've been like an hour and 20 minutes on it. Yeah, it's just, yeah.
I appreciate you, Cole. Thank you, everybody that has been watching. Y'all can hop on over to Landry's. He's doing his thing. As always, the locker room is on right now. So, again, appreciate all you, man, coming on. And as always, go Astros, go Rockets, go Texans. You have a blessed night.